All right, here we go. Welcome to week 11 of Beat the Odds. We got a big show today. Teddy's bringing the class, Mariah's bringing the sass, and Jack is bringing his big old brain, his big brain. Beat the Odds starts right now.
From our Las Vegas studios, this is Beat the Odds, sponsored by Superbook at the Westgate Las Vegas Resort and Casino, and powered by Sports Grid.
Welcome inside our Las Vegas studio. I'm Dave Hall.
And I'm Mariah Janos.
What's up with the sunglasses?
Oh, didn't you know? Jerry Jones also designed our studio, and there's a little bit of a glare from the sun over there, so had to throw them on, you know?
I told you guys, sassy, very sassy.
Well, Dallas melts in the Texas heat. Week 11 is delivering some epic matchups, though, including Kansas City at Buffalo.
Yeah, going to be fun. Coming up on today's show, Teddy and Jack will talk about that tasty matchup. Our Aaron Rodgers and his boys cooked, plus our player prop showdown and best bets.
And I'll be chopping it up with our guy, Brandon Marshall, about 2 AFC showdowns this weekend, and if there are any indication of who we could see in that conference title game come January. The team from Sports Grid is here, too.
Hey, Vegas, we're excited to beat the odds with you guys once again. Coming up, Joe Lisi and I will look at a great game from Derek Carr and New Orleans and another letdown from New York and Aaron Rodgers and what it means moving forward. So sit tight, and we'll join you guys in a bit. It's back to the crew out in Vegas.
And for the record, Jack does not have a big...
I saw what you did there, though. You had a couple of rhyming words. You look like you joined a really soft biker gang today. So somebody's giving this around right before they grumble.
It's Michael Jackson. He's going to start dancing.
You know, this whether you circle up, you know, you're going to find people. So that biker gang, the one that was left over. The good news is we're in November.
We are.
People making some money. And last week, a little bit dicey for the public, right?
Oh.
That too.
That's beautiful. Let's talk some shockers and stunners. And it starts with the shockers. Buffalo Indy under 47. That was no fun last week. It's 23-13 with 3 minutes to play. Buffalo punches in a TD. You still got plenty of room to spare. Indy's got 2nd and 25, 3rd and 15, 4th and 8 with 30 seconds, clock running. Yeah, they convert. And, of course, complete for a first down. 14 seconds left. Buffalo gets called for a neutral zone infraction. 2 seconds left. The final TD gets in the end zone. 30-20. Brutal for underbettors for Buffalo Indy. Tennessee LA wasn't much better. You know, that game. Tennessee scored a touchdown on the first drive and then didn't score another touchdown until the score is 27-10. And it's garbage time. And there's just enough time for one last drive. And they punch in that TD. 27-17 goes over the total. Underbettors not amused. And, of course, teams like Houston were 373-1 on the money line. That's a team that recorded 5 or more interceptions and that led by 15 or more points in a game. Like Houston did last week, well, now it's 373-2 lifetime. Tough if you had Houston on the money line.
Yeah, we're going to always have a few of those that are bad beats if you have on the right side, wrong side. But, you know, a couple of those jump out. Los Angeles under Harbaugh, he's been an auto bet to the under so far this year. So you're just giving back a little bit of profit if that's what you've been jumping onto, which we have a lot. Last week for the public, I think it was tougher, though, because you had a lot of underdogs across the board covering the number, winning straight up, 6 dogs straight up. So we've had kind of this ebb and flow of favorites to dogs. So general public giving back a little last week.
Sure. I mean, we talk about the public and some of these dogs. I mean, stunners. What happened? Carolina pulls the outright upset. The G-men can't be laying 6.5. Pittsburgh gifts Washington TD with a bad fake punt. Didn't matter. They pull the outright upset. We saw the new coach bump for New Orleans. They pull the outright upset over Atlanta. 3 missed field goals has something to do with that. We saw Chicago go now 23 consecutive drives without scoring a TD. New England with the outright upset and then win but no cover. Minnesota, KC win no cover. San Fran win no cover. Detroit win no cover. Yeah, lots of dogs last week.
Lots of data. We're in November trying to figure out what of this information we can grab and bet on going forward versus what we need to just push away. So that's the challenge right now.
All right, you two. Beat it.
Let's do it.
Beat it. We're moving on. Right now, there seems to be about 6 teams, give or take, who could win this whole thing. Mariah is at the Superbook Westgate Las Vegas with more.
Thanks, Dave. I'm here with EVP of Superbook Operations, Jay Cornegay. Jay, Dan Campbell's already talking about the postseason, so I figured we might as well shift our focus there too, looking at futures odds. Which teams are the favorite at this point in time?
Well, we're halfway through it now, and the cream is rising. So you look at Kansas City, they're co-favorites with Detroit. They're both 4-1. You have Baltimore that's hanging right in there. They're at 5-1, and we have Buffalo at 8-1. We've got a couple other contenders right there at 10-1, San Francisco and Philadelphia. So those are the cream of the crop right now as we hit the halfway point.
And is there any team that is surprisingly getting a lot of wagers in the futures market?
Yes, we're keeping an eye on Pittsburgh. They just keep winning. They do nothing but win, and their defense is real. So it's understandable that they're getting a lot of attention from the bettors.
I'm still baffled by them and where they're at this season. They're such a strong team, which was really surprising. But I want to go back to those futures lines. What are those odds based off of? Is it the amount of money coming in on those teams, or is it how they're performing each week?
There's a number of variables that we look at for making those odds. We look at obviously the money that's coming in. We're looking at how they're playing. We're looking at their injuries, and we're also looking at the remaining schedule. So all of those are factors in how we determine the odds.
All right, Jay, thank you so much. Dave, we'll send it back to you in studio.
And thanks to you too. Up next, Jack has some advice for all of us. Don't be lazy, as he sits over there eating candy or something. But he's talking about sports betting laziness. Plus, Teddy is going to break down that huge KC Buffalo game.
Before we head to break, with 5 interceptions in Week 10, Detroit QB Jared Goff became the 3rd quarterback in the past 30 years to win a game while throwing at least 5 picks. But who were the other 2? The answer after the break.
Beat the Odds is sponsored by Superbook Westgate Las Vegas and powered by Sports Grid.
Welcome back. Before the break, we asked you, with 5 interceptions in Week 10, Detroit quarterback Jared Goff became the 3rd quarterback in the past 30 years to win a game while throwing at least 5 picks. But who were the other 2? The answer, Matt Ryan and Tony Romo. Ryan did it in 2012 against Arizona, and Romo did it in 2007 against Buffalo. Woof. All right, time to welcome in our champ, Brandon Marshall. We've got 2 major AFC showdowns this weekend, Kansas City at Buffalo, Baltimore at Pittsburgh. Let's start with KC at Buffalo, though. Kansas City just keeps winning. We thought Denver had finally figured out how to put a stop to this madness. No, they didn't. Yeah. They just made it look easy again down the stretch there. So what does it take for Buffalo to hand Kansas City their first loss? Is it possible at this point?
I mean, it's tough because Kansas City wins in every way possible. Right. So it's tough to pinpoint and say, okay, all right, you have to contain Mahomes or stop the run, or you have to be able to extend drives, running the football, because Denver did everything it needed to do. It's just when it got down to it, KC ends up blocking the field goal, which blew my mind because it looked like they ran over everybody. So at the end of the day, they just have to play mistake-free football. When I say mistake-free, mistake-free. They can't make any mistakes against Kansas City because they tend to capitalize off whatever happens on your side. So just play mistake-free. Don't turn the ball over and score.
I want to call them fluke wins, but it's happening too often that it's like, is it a fluke? Are they just really all over it? It is wild. But looking at that other game now in Pittsburgh, it's another fascinating situation because we saw Pittsburgh as this fraudulent team with a brilliant head coach, but they keep on winning. And now I'm feeling like it's 2009 again. Pittsburgh has a chance to get back in it. Just what do you make of this team going up against their in-conference opponent in Baltimore?
Well, look, Mike Tomlin, is a GOAT coach.
Right.
All right. 18, 19 years, never had a losing season. I don't know if anybody has ever done it, right? So I think we need to give him more of his flowers, more of his due. They can absolutely beat Baltimore. Russell Wilson is playing well. They have a great coach. They're just a unit. They're actually one of the teams that, I don't even know if you can call them a sleeper anymore.
Right.
Because, they're really creeping up there, and they're really the best team, or one of the best teams in the AFC right now. So, I love what Pittsburgh's doing. I love what they did at the trade deadline. Mike Williams, Preston Smith. I love what they're doing. So, one thing that's a weakness for Baltimore is their defense. And it's crazy to even hear that, right? Because Baltimore's always been a defensive franchise, but right now, #1 offense, they have the last passing defense in the league, which is actually mind-boggling. So, they got to show that up, or they won't get past the AFC Championship, which we think they'll get to. But this matchup is really indicative of what could happen in the playoffs.
Yeah, both of them really. This weekend is going to be very telling in the AFC, so we'll see how all that goes. Thank you so much, Brandon. All right, Jack says November is no time to get lazy. I think I disagree just based on the whole Thanksgiving vibe, but what do you mean by that, Jack?
Yeah, Kansas City and Pittsburgh is an underdog. That's not good for your bankroll trying to fade either of them long term. But let's look at some information in November. Listen, I love laying around after Thanksgiving as much as anybody, but when you're playing when you're playing these games, though, you've got to do more than just look at what happened last week. And what happened last week sometimes will generate some value in betting on a team that played badly or did something weird last week. So let's look at Detroit and Jacksonville. You're not going to look at Detroit as having value most of the year. They've been a super sexy team all year long as far as covering numbers. This team since the middle of 2021, guys, 40 and 16 against the spread. That is that's cover rate over 2.5 years of football. So you're normally not getting value with them, but with all the interceptions last week, there's a little value there. Combine that when you have double-digit favorites in the league right now. They're 4-0 this year, covered every single time. So you might want to not jump off Detroit simply because they had turnovers last week. When we look at the other one, it's the same type of situation. You had one team in New England that took advantage of Chicago and basically not knowing what day it is. Fire their offensive coordinator, can't get the ball down the field, not scoring against anybody. Listen, I love Drake May as much as anybody, King, all right, but I'm not relying on him to cover numbers against Los Angeles that's been averaging over 20 against just about anybody. So I wouldn't take that one victory from New England and move it to this week. Let's find some value betting against them.
And you mentioned, betting against Kansas City. I know you got more on that, Teddy.
Sure. We have to talk about KC as an underdog because they put together a remarkable track record. This year, only one time as a dog. They went to San Francisco, won that game by double digits, a 10-point victory. Last year in the playoffs, you know what they did? They won at Buffalo, they won at Baltimore, they won at San Fran in the big game. 9-1 against the spread the last 10 for KC. Worth noting, the one of that 9-1, that was a loss at Buffalo in 2022. They're 7-0 their last 7 tries as road dogs. But it's important to note, all of that already happened. It's rear view mirror. So when we talk about KC moving forward, maybe not quite so good, ATS, compared to what they've done. Similarly, we got a team that's a real dicey favorite when you think about it. That's New York, Gang Green. What are they? 1-4 against the spread their last 5. They lost to Denver. They lost to New England. They lost to Arizona, Pittsburgh. They've only covered 3 of their last 12 as dogs, or as favorites, I should say, consistently failing in this role. And of course, the veteran team with playoff aspirations, but it is worth noting, all 3 wins came by a TD or more. They have been decent when given the opportunity to step down in class.
All right, good stuff. Thanks, guys. So Atlanta is in first place right now, thanks in large part to a man named Bijan. Here's Sports Grid with more on that.
Kevin Walsh and Joe Lisi here, taking a look at some of the overperformers this past weekend. And Joe, I think we just start with Atlanta because Bijan Robinson is a player of great talent. But in a loss, pretty surprised to see him still put up 20 carries, turn that into 116 yards and 2 touchdowns. Can we trust Bijan to perform like this, win or loss for ATL?
Absolutely. Running the football and catching it out of the backfield, he is the main option for that offense, a workhorse. This is what you expected when they drafted him out of Texas. We didn't see it as much last year. Now they're starting to utilize him in terms of this rushing attack, RB #1. Expected to continue the rest of the way, especially if Atlanta is going to challenge for a division championship and, more importantly, a wild card or NFC championship as well. So Bijan has to be that option.
And look, the big thing for Atlanta compared to the rest of that division, certainly Tampa Bay and New Orleans, they've stayed healthy. Didn't help them, though. New Orleans ends up winning that football game despite being a home underdog, in large part due to a great game out of Derek Carr. Nearly 11 yards per pass attempt, multiple touchdowns, no interceptions there. Derek Carr still has talent, Joe. Despite New Orleans' season feeling lost, can we expect big games out of him like this?
I think so. Now that Darren Rizzi is the interim head coach, that team is playing with intensity. You saw Derek Carr struggle a little bit, first game back from hiatus against Carolina a couple of weeks ago. They lost that matchup. He spread the football to a number of different wide receivers this past Sunday. Expected to continue the rest of the way. Tough matchup this weekend with Cleveland coming off a bye.
New Orleans, little under the radar. Tennessee, similarly. That's because of the wins and losses. But production, props, Calvin Ridley is making people loads of money, multiple touchdowns despite the loss this past weekend.
Last 3 games, he has averaged 100 yards per game, 2 touchdowns this past weekend. Expect him to be the main option for Will Levis or Mason Rudolph. He's going up this weekend against Minnesota's defense that has given up 232 passing yards per game. That ranks 26th worst in the NFL.
I think all signs indicate that Tennessee, when the season is done, will be looking for a new quarterback. Whomever that is, I think will be very excited to get to play some football alongside Calvin Ridley, still showing he has the goods. Certainly, we'll watch it play out throughout the year.
You're watching Beat the Odds, sponsored by Superbook at the Westgate Las Vegas Resort and Casino, and powered by Sports Grid.
All right, welcome back to Las Vegas, our home for Beat the Odds. I mean, look at that beautiful shot. Scan that QR code. It's our website, beattheoddstv.com. Now let's head back to the boys at Sports Grid.
Kevin Walsh and Joe Lisi here. Looking at some of the letdowns from this past weekend in the pro football landscape. And I think we got to look at Justin Jefferson, Joe. He's been having a great season for Minnesota. But going up against Jacksonville, only 5 grabs for 48 yards. You look at his prior performances, 137, 115, 81, 92. We expect a lot more from Jay Jettis. We didn't get it last weekend.
We didn't. It was an ugly game. Minnesota pulls that victory out on the road, 12-7. We saw the emergence of tight end T.J. Hawkinson step up. He had over 70 yards receiving, but that might benefit Justin Jefferson this weekend against Tennessee. Tennessee did lose by 10 to L.A. and Jim Harbaugh. Justin Herbert played well. I expect Justin Jefferson to step up this coming weekend.
Hasn't scored a touchdown in 3 straight games. I wonder if that streak could be snapped. You mentioned L.A. J.K. Dobbins has looked like the best in the backfield for L.A., but an injury to Gus Edwards cleared out the pathway. Gus's first game back off IR, and he actually looked like the better back, had more yards and 5 less carries than Dobbins. Any worry about JK's workload moving forward?
A slight concern, because when LA does want to utilize fresh legs in the ballgame at every single time, Hassan Haskins did get involved in terms of that offense. Jim Harbaugh wants to run the football consistently, so workload might be a little bit less this coming week and moving forward towards the playoffs for J.K. Dobbins, saving him for a playoff run.
And I think Harbaugh is more than willing to go with a hot hand. I think he's willing to go away from a hot hand. I don't think he cares much about feeding any one player. Quickly, a player, a team that would fit this every week, New York and Aaron Rodgers. But, man, that was probably the worst we've seen of him this season in that one against Arizona. No touchdowns, 151 yards, his lowest QBR in a game this season.
Arizona's defense has been stepping up. They did it in back-to-back weeks against Chicago, and this past weekend against New York, held Aaron Rodgers and that team to 4.3 yards per pass play. Aaron Rodgers might have better statistics, but the wins might not come.
I still cannot believe how much Rodgers and Devontae Adams cannot get on the same page since joining forces. It's something we'll be keeping an eye on, no doubt.
Yeah, forget Mike Tyson, Jake Paul. This is the biggest fight of the weekend. It's Teddy against Jack in our player prop showdown. Today, the boys will debate Joe Burrow.
Joe Burrow over 1.5 touchdown passes. Yeah, he's getting over. He's thrown 9 in the last 2 weeks alone, since he's not even trying to run. Last week, 16 rush attempts versus 56 pass attempts against Baltimore. It's all passing right now. LA, their opponent, feasting on the week. Their last 3 QBs faced Will Levis, Jameis Winston, Spencer Rattler, not a who's who of elites, and all the early week sharp money on the over here for good reason. We're going to see points. We're going to see touchdowns. Burrow over.
You've gotten enamored with the sharps. I think that this is a much tougher test defensively. Harbaugh's been an automatic underplay. They're going to have trouble getting in the end zone, and the frosted tips are gone for Burrow, so I think that's a problem long term. So give me under touchdowns in that one.
Was that his secret power, the frosted tips?
It absolutely was. As far as he thought, he's like Samson. You know, the long hair, the tips. you're going to play better.
All right, well, there are some great games this weekend, some stinkers too. So, of course, these two are betting on the stinkers, but gives you a reason to watch, right? Their best bets are next. All right, welcome back to Beat the Odds. I bet Jack says this a lot. You might need to hold your nose.
Are we talking about his hygiene or his picks?
Have not lost in over a month. I'd like a little credit here.
Oh, right? Keep them down, please.
Were you not flexible enough to pat yourself on the back?
I could have, but my belly was going to show there. The sharp payout. I'm by Mariah. There was a whole perfect storm full of bad things.
All right, Teddy, just take it away, please.
Yeah. I don't want to think about Jack's belly right now. But I do want to think about what happened last week where I gave you guys and told you and put my hard-earned money on Chicago, too. And obviously, it didn't work out real well.
Way to take ownership, though.
That was a terrible pick.
Look, I was as bad a pick as I'll have on this show all year, I hope. That being said, now let's learn from that and take advantage of Chicago by betting against them. This is an offense that's in free fall. 23 consecutive drives without a TD. And really, 3 of the 4 quarters in Washington were bad as well. They have cluster injuries on the offensive line. That's a problem with the rookie QB. Green Bay owns Chicago on this field, 5-0 the last 5. And, Green Bay's interested. They're coming off a loss and a bye week, fully focused and ready. Blowout.
It's when you go adopt a dog and it bites you, and then you say, you know what, I'm a cat person, you go get a cat. That's what you've done. You flipped over. You had Chicago, now you're against Chicago. I'm going to stay off that game entirely because I don't have to watch Chicago in any way, shape, or form. Let's go under with
So you're betting this game?
Absolutely. Listen, you have to watch this one because there's going to be a lot of points here. I talked about Drake May, King, love him.
Yeah.
They're not an offensive juggernaut, and LA has been living on keeping bad quarterbacks down, and they've been scoring against just about anybody here, but I like under the total here. New England only averaging 16 points a game. They've been not afraid to get blown out. That's going to put them in a one-dimensional situation, hard to get the ball in the end zone. Let's go under in LA, New England.
Those unders have been cashing for you, no doubt about it.
No problem.
Should we end the show talking about our wardrobe selection today? Because there's been a lot of comments.
We have it covered.
Dave was fly fishing / going on a motorcycle. Honestly, he just saw my outfit and thought I need to step it up, but he missed the mark a little bit. And it's okay. It's hard to be me.
I look like a guy tried to recapture his youth at the club. No good.
See you next week.